What's going on, guys? In this video, I'm going to share with you something that really has changed the entire way that I think about business and inventing and creating ideas and taking a product that I might have in my head and actually trying or attempting to bring it to market. And that topic is product licensing. Now, that's what this presentation is going to be about, but really I wanted to make it a little bit more practical for you. So I had an idea, and maybe I've had it a few times over the years, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, and only really in the last 6 months have I actively been working on a prototype for this idea. And about a year ago, I had a little kind of brainstorm with a friend of mine, and we did some research into this market and or the market that this product ideas will be in. It's like a janitorial product, and I'll elaborate on it maybe at the end of this presentation. But needless to say, I began to research the competitors and research the market and research the distribution. This is typically a B2C product, so a B2B product. So this is a product that most distributors sell into other businesses. So for offices or venues or things of that nature. So 6 months ago, I started really working on this idea. And while doing research for this idea and kind of researching maybe getting a patent or thinking about an IP attorney or a patent attorney, I stumbled upon something called product licensing. And shout out to the next slide. So basically, real quick to return to the presentation, the subtitle of this is really how we can turn wacky invention ideas into money. And I want to, in the next slide, pay homage to some of the people that I've been learning from. So on the far left, his name is Dan Klitzner. So he is the founder of Bop It. And this slide's really just to pay homage to some really cool inventors and things that over the years have inspired me, things that I've enjoyed, and even more recently over to the right, things that are people that I'm learning from regarding licensing. So anyway, on the left, Bop It, he has a really cool TikTok at Bop It Inventor on TikTok. You guys should check that out if you haven't already. And that basically just talks about how he invented one of the first Clorox bottles. And that later led to him having enough money to invent on the side some toy ideas he has. And that's how Bop It was created. In the middle here is Paul Eichen. So he created a company called Rockenbach, and that's a toy that I used to play with when I was younger that I really enjoyed. So I wanted to put that on there. The gentleman below him is Lonnie Johnson. So that is the founder of the Super Soaker, another awesome invention and toy idea that a lot of us grew up with. And to the right, so I guess real quick, on the lower right is George Carter III. He invented the first laser tag. So it was another very gamifying product that did really well in the market. And so the book cover right there is One Simple Idea by Stephen Key. So this is someone over the last 6 months that's become very important in my life because I've been learning a lot from him and his company and his YouTube channel, and really turned me on to product licensing. And that's the exact information, or a lot of the information, that I'm passing on to you today. So Stephen Key, one of his most notable inventions is the spin formation label. So it's a spinning information label. You can kind of see in the hands on the right here. The label spins, and so you're able to read drug facts on the secondary label that's beneath it. And it increases the label size, I want to say, by like some 40 or 70%, something pretty outrageous. But it was a really cool idea, and the reason I put that lower right photo of the Lego Bionicles is because he ended up suing Lego for potentially infringing on his patent that he had around the manufacturing and creation of the labels themselves. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So if you think about an idea, and like I mentioned in this product idea that I'm working on in the janitorial space, if I were to want to take that product or that invention to the market by myself, that is what I consider now as the old way. And we call this a lot of the time venturing. So I would make a business plan or a sales plan. That's kind of how I think of business plans, right? How am I going to sell this product? How am I going to get it into the hands of consumers, customers, businesses, whoever is the end customer? I'd probably have to, lay all that out. Some variation of then raising capital or self-funding, just depending on if I have the resources myself or if I want to go raise money and give away equity in the potential idea. Or pre-sell the idea, right? I could go to businesses and say, hey, this is the product, this is the problem it solves. Give me 50% of your initial order up front. I'm going to go make it, give me a month or two, and then I'll deliver the goods. That's probably my second step. Then I would have to market the product. So whether it's digital advertising, whether it's other forms of advertising, just going door to door or cold emailing, however I would want to get my product idea out there. And like I said, the two different variants of that are B2C, business to consumer. So that would be more digital advertising, running ads on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or B2B, which is usually cold emailing, cold calling, walking into businesses, meeting business owners, that angle. Next, you'd have to manufacture the product. So you'd have to become somewhat of an expert and, person who understands product pricing and material costs and importing and all these things that go along with manufacturing at scale and getting your unit economics down. Then you'd have to fulfill. So you'd have to have some sort of physical inventory somewhere, whether you're drop shipping it from your supplier directly to your customers. Some sort of form of fulfillment would have to go into that, as well as industry knowledge. So forget all of the other steps. You just have to have some basic industry knowledge. If this is a new industry for you, A, you're going to have to learn that industry at least somewhat. And B, a lot of us do typically have this knowledge. And that's one thing that we'll talk about in the next few slides here, is having, some knowledge maybe at your current job that you could leverage to invent things and have product ideas in the future. But if not, that's just going to be another time sink, kind of in this old venture way. Now, there is a new way, right? If that sounds overwhelming, it's because it is, guys. Over the years, and I'm still on this journey, especially into this new venture of licensing, this new opportunity of licensing. The other way, the venturing way, is difficult. There's a lot of stuff to do. This is why most businesses, in my opinion, fail in the first few years, because this stuff, there's just so many learning curves. You have to be an expert in so many different areas to be a successful business owner, and you have to have a good product that there is demand for and people buy, and it's got to be priced right and competitively, and just there's so much that goes into it. So, without further ado, this new opportunity and the new, the way I think about inventing things now is product licensing. So that is the new way, is licensing your ideas. Now, what is licensing? So licensing is more or less renting out your product idea to an existing company. So I like to think of them as manufacturers or suppliers that have the capability, who would rent out your idea from you while you might own the intellectual property, right? The patent or the patent pending or things of that nature. And then you would license it to them in exchange for a royalty rate. And that rate is, we're going to lay out down below. But that is how you would bring the product to market. Now, this is such a better way compared to that last slide we went through of all the different, options for venturing. This is such a much faster way to get your product to market, because that's really, at the end of the day, what matters, right? You might spend years getting a patent for a product. It never goes to the market. So what? You've got this great patent that you maybe spent $10,000 on. You've got a plaque in your office, but you never took it to market because you ran out of time, right? Someone already spun up an idea and went to market, and they might be making their royalties off that. And you missed out on it because you might own you just focused too much on the IP instead of getting the market feedback. So without further ado, just talking about the economics a little bit, royalty rate is what the company that you're going to license with is going to pay you per unit. The annual product volume, and you can do this by you can figure this number out by doing some research into your area. You might already know how much of a certain product is selling. Maybe if you look into some Amazon analytics or kind of, reverse engineer some of those numbers, and then also your sales or buy price. So what the end consumer is paying for the goods, or the OE, or rather the end business, whoever's buying it is going to end up paying for the goods. That's going to be your multiplier on that side. So if royalty rate times your annual product volume times your sales and buy price. And the example I listed below was, let's say your royalty rate is 5%. That's the 0.05 on the left. It sells about 250,000 units a year. That's a 250,000, and it sells for a price of $4.50. Well, that is going to net you, the inventor or the licensee, as about $56,250 a year. And everything I've researched thus far, it seems like this number would be paid out quarterly. And typically, since it takes a while for the volume to ramp up of a lot of your licenses and your licensed products, that first check's going to be pretty dismal. You might get some sort of a signing bonus, and that's something I found out. You might, let's say I've invested $10,000 to $15,000 in this idea thus far, prototypes, engineering, just different things that I've put money into the project. When I approach a company and if they're interested in licensing, they might actually give me an upfront bonus or an upfront lump sum if they really like my idea, which is pretty cool. And then after that, then that's when the licensing checks would start and the royalty checks would start kicking in. Typically, like I said, the first one, maybe the second, are going to be smaller checks than once your product is fully ramped up because they're bringing it to market, they're starting to sell, and they're getting feedback, and you might have to iterate. Might have to iterate on the manufacturing something, but that's when they'll slowly start to ramp up. But that's one example of the payout, if you will, of one of your licensees, which is pretty cool. So up to this point, the last 6 months, as I mentioned, I've been doing some research on how exactly we get this done. How are we going to go out there, invent ideas? How are we going to license these ideas? And how are we going to sit back and collect the royalty checks, right? Or at least in theory, that's how we'd want it to work. Well, this is the final iteration of everything that I've found out thus far. So ideas and brainstorming, typically most people have this part covered, right? So you're going to have over the years maybe a note sheet or a notebook of ideas that you've had, and it might be anything from let's say a toilet paper holder that you might be annoyed with at your house, and so you think of a better version for that, or it's a specialty water bottle, or it's a specialty tool, or it's a specialty anything that you think could be improved upon, right? So ideas and brainstorming sometimes that's just generating potential inventions and potential new ideas. The second step here is going to be sketching or engineering drawing. So this is where you're going to take that idea, put it on a paper, and then, or just really create something that you can then pass on to someone who's going to help you with the idea. So whether that's inventing like a prototype house that you go to and you're going to pay to make your prototype, or it's an engineer that you're working with on Upwork or Fiverr or any of these sites nowadays that exist. It's just your way of translating your idea to them, whether it's drawing, maybe a voice memo, whether it's like a rough sketch, or maybe you did some sort of CAD in like a 2D drawing on your computer that you're going to pass off. So that's that step. The next step is going to be any it's called a prior art search, which is really just an existing patent search. So typically you go to Google Patent or a website like that, and you can actually look up existing patents, whether they've expired, whether they're live, whether they're patent. I guess you wouldn't be able to see patent pending ones, so provisional patents you wouldn't be able to see, but anything that's already out there or it's already been filed in the patent world, you'd be able to see. So this is just a good way to get a background on your idea, and if it's out there, and if not, and if it is, right, you're going to know pretty quick. So it's not worth spending a lot of time on that idea, and that's a big one. So you definitely want to do that, and this does connect to market research as well, because if you have an idea, the first thing you're going to probably do is Google it and see if there's something existing out there. And if you find it, obviously you're going to find that before you're going to go, you're going to find the existing patent. So that'll be the kind of sequence. Do some general market research on Google. If you haven't found anything, dive into Google Patents or any patent website to try and find more and see if this is really feasible. See if this is something you can get some intellectual property around, and then start shopping it to potential manufacturers, right, and licensees. The next step is going to be actually prototyping your idea. So the way that this looks typically is after you've worked with, an engineer or a prototype house, or someone who's helping you model or create a rough prototype. This is that step. A lot of the times nowadays, this is just going to be a 3D photorealistic rendering. Your product doesn't even have to be real, right? If you're inventing a water bottle or something, you don't need to actually blow the glass to make the glass water bottle. Nowadays, you can just use, a mechanical engineer or a CAD engineer that would make the model in CAD, computer-aided design software, and then they can make photorealistic renderings in softwares like Blender, or there's other ways to do 3D renderings of things. And that's really cool because that eliminates a lot of the need for physical prototyping, a lot of the need for spending money on 3D printing things and getting casts made, or getting maybe metal casting, or all these different ways of prototyping things, whether it's metal, whatever material you're going to be using. A photorealistic render is a much faster way to do things, and it allows you to take your idea to the market to your potential customer, which is a supplier or manufacturer, to try and get it licensed. And that's kind of fits into the sales sheets, demos, ad videos, which is the next step. So this is where you're using those renderings, the models, the prototypes to make collateral, marketing collateral, whether that's videos, whether that's product demos. It could be a talking head video. Hey guys, this is my product. This is how it works, et cetera, et cetera. Or a sales sheet, which is simply a PDF typically, or Word doc, or however you want to format it, that gives the high-level benefits of your idea. So it's like a one-pager for your idea. And that's really useful because that's typically how you get the attention of companies when you have an idea. So I'd make a sales sheet and I'd start to send it out to companies. Now, before I send it out to companies, typically I want to have some sort of intellectual property protection in place. And the nice thing is, a lot of people think of this as, yeah, I need a patent in place. I need to spend the 10 grand with the attorney. I need to hire a patent or an intellectual property attorney. And frankly, that's the belief I had 6 months ago. When in reality, there's something called a provisional patent application. And at the time I'm recording this, I think it's about $65 for an individual to file a provisional patent application. It's something that can be simplified to where you can just fill it out. You don't need the help of an attorney or an engineer or anything like that. You can highlight the benefits of your product, and all, future videos will go over this in detail. But this is something you can file, which gives you the right to put patent pending on your sales sheets and all your product demos and your product. While it has a year of protection, and like I said, further details for future videos. But this protects you moving forward to the next step, which is the outreach, which is pitching, which is getting in contact with companies that you want to license with and that will be interested in licensing your product. They want they want your product to add to their product lineup, to add to their product portfolio, their line card, all that good stuff. And if it fits, that's really the best, right? You want to be thinking about how your product fits into existing companies before you ever get to this step. And part of this step and the next is when you hear back from these companies. And that's really the feedback they're going to say, oh, we're potentially interested in that, but have you thought about this? Or, in our experience, it's really hard to construct, this solution like this. Or what, have you done any production costing for this? Because this seems pretty expensive compared to what our current product lineup is. They're going to start to ask you a lot of those questions, right? And these are questions that, in my opinion, you should be pretty well versed on at this point. If you have an idea, and we'll talk about how that differs, because the idea that I've been fleshing out for, at least personally, for the last 6 months, I have a really good idea of what my product costs are. I know how much it costs to 3D print prototypes. I know how much the production's potentially going to cost for a few different variants that I have in my lineup, right? So I'm ready to discuss that with manufacturers or with companies that are licensing because I've done my homework. I know the metrics of the idea. And I think that's really important because at least in the beginning, it's not super important, but when you get further into an idea, if you believe in it, it's going to be how you expedite your license deal, frankly. And then finally, your last step, once you've come to an agreement with the company, you're going to agree on your royalty rate. Now, typically I've seen in my research from 5% up to 25%, with the more average or the more common one being probably between 3 and 7%. So typically about 5% I think is going to be the average for most of your license and royalty rates when you finally get your license agreement. And your royalty rate can largely depend on how much protection you have around the idea. Is it patent pending? Do you already have the patent? And that's where the IP could come into play a little later on. But don't worry so much about that because a provisional patent is an amazing way to bring a product all the way to your licensing deal without having a ton of money into the idea, which is awesome. So that's the overall how of this. I want you to think for a moment and imagine the potential in all your ideas if you didn't actually have to do all the work yourself. Now, I know for me, and I wanted just to show you guys this slide because it's over the years, I've had, dozens of business ideas, dozens of product ideas, and things that I've fleshed out into. Typically my process is I'll think of something, right? I'll throw together a little slideshow, and it's evolved over the years. So from left to right, Dumo dual monitor frame. This was I've actually pitched this idea in a elevator pitch competition in college. And this was back in 2014. And this was an idea basically to, at the time I was carrying an iPad and my laptop around to classes, right? So I was already carrying these two devices, but I wanted some sort of external monitor for my laptop because, typically most of us like having more monitors and more surface area or more screen space to work with. So when I was sitting at the library, obviously I didn't have my extra monitor that I could, drag windows over to. So I didn't have a lot of space, but I had my iPad. So there were softwares at the time that could mesh the two, but there wasn't any sort of mount that could physically hold my iPad near my screen to make it kind of a dual monitor setup. So that was one of my first product ideas. I pitched it. I didn't even make top 3 in the pitch competition, and that's probably my fault of pitching it. But anyway, I just want to share that with you because I just think of how I would do that now, thinking about product licensing, right? I'd probably go straight to an external monitor company, and I would say, hey, here's my idea. I'm looking for a frame or a mount, right, that we can use to mount an iPad to a laptop. And they're already going to have all the resources in place to help me bring that to market because they're already in the market, right? They're going to have the manufacturing sorted. They're going to know what size and what, typical materials are used in these types of applications. They're going to have the product and the market knowledge that you need to bring this idea to market quickly. And they're just going to have the experience, frankly. And that's what you're banking on. That's what's cool about product licensing is it almost gives you innate leverage because you're working with existing entities that have done the homework, right? They're poised to take your idea to market and in turn pay your royalty rate, right? It's a really cool win-win, I think, for both parties. The second one is an idea I had to actually reduce like shootings in public venues. I know, unfortunately, this has become a pretty big thing in America, but this is more or less a sensor array that could potentially be solar powered that would, track gunshots, use machine learning to track people coming in and out with maybe larger bags that could be carrying weapons, things of that nature. And then it could have different pan tilt functions for following people through or, with a camera, tracking threats. And then, like I mentioned, acoustic sensors, infrared sensors to do gunshot detection, which could be really cool. But, that is a very difficult idea to take to market and a very expensive idea to take to market. So I just think about, wow, I could think of all the companies. I'd already done research on the competitors who are making similar devices that have all the sensors. So what if I just brought this to them and we tag teamed it together, right? And we worked on it together and they're going to pay me a royalty rate when they start selling. I'd much rather do that than just, end up where I ended up, which is, this ended up just as a slide deck on my computer, right? So it's just working with someone who can help you, right? You don't have to be a one-man band or a one-lady band. You don't have to do it yourself. And that's something that I've learned and I really want to make very apparent and pass on to you. And the idea on the right is actually my first company that I really went and invested a lot of my time and effort and money into. And that was called Soul Shorts. More or less the idea behind it in this lower photo. Lululemon at the time was making sublimated shorts, which are these kind of cool patterns on the shorts. So I wanted to do a men's apparel line that did that. And I did. We launched a little Kickstarter, raised some money. It's crazy looking back on that. I ended up running out of money, didn't have a ton to spend on advertising. I didn't even know how to run ads at the time or make really a website for that matter. I'd kind of jumbled together a Shopify website. So that was my first foray into really learning that. But I think coming out of this, I learned how to market. I learned what it would take to actually sell a product to consumers, right? A B2C product. And it was a lot of work. But my final iteration was the khaki shorts on the far right, this kind of more heavy duty material, khaki material in different colors. And if I were to continue this line of apparel, I simply would go to an existing business like a PacSun or a Tilly's after knowing what I know about apparel and the way that it works. And I would go to a company like a PacSun or a Tilly's. They're selling all the name brand stuff, right? The Quicksilvers, the Rukas, you name it. And they actually sell a house brand as well, right? A PacSun label brand or a Tilly's labeled brand. And I would take the pattern that I went through a lot of effort to make with those for these shorts on the right, and I would take it to them. And I would work with them on, them using my awesome pattern and show you how awesomely designed these were. And then I would have hopefully a license deal with them, and they would sell it as their brand, and then they would cut me a royalty on every pair they make. So that's just to say that there is innate leverage in the product licensing model that you can tap into, and that you can actually take all your ideas to market without having to spend, I mean, at this point, I could have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring these to market and probably failed at all three of them, to be totally honest. So if you like this presentation, I just want to encourage you to join the community. You can find it at licenseparty.com. This is where I send out a newsletter talking about my journey inventing and how you can learn from it and how you can actually, fast track your process from maybe 6 months to getting a product license to even less time. I'm probably at about the 6th month mark, and I'm closing in on the end, but this is somewhere where we can keep in touch and we can work together to help you get your product to market. And then also I'll send out cool stuff, like you can see my actual sales sheets that I'm working on, and that's one of them right there. So I appreciate you guys watching. That's Product Licensing 101. Thank you. If you liked the video, obviously hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this type of content where we do how-to videos on exactly how to go through the licensing process and dive into each of those steps in particular. Thanks for watching. Have a great one. Bye-bye.